From an authoritarian abroad to an authoritarian here at home. A federal judge has cited Donald Trump's, quote, own words and actions as evidence to suggest that he was in a conspiracy with extremists to overturn the 2020 election. District Judge Amit Mehta rejected Trump's request to toss out lawsuits by members of Congress and police officers seeking damages for physical and emotional injuries incurred on January 6th. In a scathing 112-page opinion, the judge said that Trump's words show that he and the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, quote, pursued the same goal, and that Trump would have known his words were understood as a, quote, call to action, and that his response to the violence made it all the more plausible that he was involved in a, quote, tacit agreement with the rioters. Joining us now, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC contributor Barbara McQuaid and Charlie Sykes, who is still here. Barb, this opinion is a barn burner. I could quote from it, but maybe I will. But first, I just want to ask you what you make of it and why it's important.
A federal judge just ruled that Donald Trump is not immune from civil lawsuits over January 6th. And the language in that ruling is something people need to sit with, because this is not just about one court case. This is about a sitting president, a violent attack on the U.S. Capitol, and a legal document that uses the word conspiracy. If you want to understand what is really happening here and why it matters right now, stay with this. So here is what that ruling actually means. In simple terms, a federal judge looked at everything Trump's words, his actions, his connections to the Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers, and said these lawsuits can go forward. Trump is not protected. Normally, a president can use immunity to block civil lawsuits. The argument is that anything a president does in office is shielded from personal liability. But Judge Mehta said Trump was not acting as president on January 6th. He was acting as a disgruntled candidate. That is a significant legal distinction. It means the court is treating what happened that day not as an exercise of presidential power, but as a personal political act with consequences. And that opens a door, not just for civil damages. As the legal analyst in this clip points out, if Trump was conspiring with others to intimidate Mike Pence from doing his job, that touches on criminal statutes too. There is a law that makes it a crime to conspire with others to prevent a federal officer from carrying out their duties. Mike Pence was that federal officer on January 6th. Now watch what comes next, because the ruling goes even deeper than immunity.
Well, legally, John, the reason it's important is it says that these lawsuits can go forward. You know, ordinarily a president is able to use immunity to get out from under civil lawsuits. Anything he does within the scope of his presidency is up for immunity. But what the court said here is he wasn't acting as president. He was acting as a disgruntled candidate. And for that reason, all of that behavior may be the subject of a civil suit. But importantly, he also, as you said, links up his behavior with that of the Oath Keepers and the Proud Boys. I think that is an avenue that ought to be explored by criminal prosecutors, because there is a statute that makes it a crime to conspire with others to intimidate or prevent someone from doing their job who is a federal officer. And that person in this case is Mike Pence. So even if he didn't intend to incite the riot, if he was just trying to intimidate Mike Pence with his conduct there, that could be not only the basis for a civil suit, but even criminal charges.
Charlie, I read this opinion and I could quote it at length, but it's all kind of so obviously true that it almost seems like redundant to say it. But I will say this: Judge Mehta really has a colorful way with words. Compares Trump's January 6th rally speech to telling an excited mob that corn dealers starve the poor in front of the corn dealer's home. That's a nice turn of phrase. I like that, and compelling. Do you think where do you think this is headed in terms of both the legal and political implications of it? Does it matter to Trump? Does this have any real impact? Or is this just another kind of turn of the screw as that's part of a larger series of legal things that are kind of bearing down on the former president?
Well, that's hard to say, but John, this is just a remarkable moment. We have been talking about this for 6 years, but think about this. I was thinking about what Ambassador McCall just said about, America standing up to China at a moment when we are so bitterly divided. And here we have this evidence that the former president of the United States engaged in seditious activity, that he abused his office, that he was part of this effort to block the peaceful transfer of power. This is an amazing moment. And I think the positive thing that we need to focus on is the fact that there are still avenues to hold him accountable. I think the great tragedy would be if Donald Trump was not held accountable for his conduct in all of this. So, whether it's going to be the Department of Justice or whether it's going to be the January 6th Commission or whether it's going to be these civil lawsuits, you have to hope that something comes of that there are consequences to this and that people are paying attention to what this man did and tried to do to this country at a moment of great peril and of great crisis.
What the judge is describing here is not just a legal argument. It is a pattern of behavior that a court has now put on paper in a 112-page ruling. Judge Mehta found that the allegations in the lawsuits, if true, could establish a plausible conspiracy involving President Trump and those who carried out the January 6th attack. And he was careful to explain what conspiracy means in this context. A civil conspiracy does not require an explicit agreement. A tacit agreement, one that is implied but not directly expressed, is enough. The key is that the parties share the same general objective. In plain language, Trump did not need to sit in a room with the Proud Boys and plan the attack step by step. What the court is saying is that if they were all working toward the same goal, that is enough to establish a conspiracy in civil law. Now, here is where this gets more serious. The people Judge Mehta is connecting Trump to are not minor figures. Juries in Washington convicted Proud Boys and Oath Keepers, leaders of orchestrating violent plots to stop the peaceful transfer of power after Trump's 2020 election loss. Stuart Rhodes, the Oath Keepers founder, was sentenced to 18 years in prison. Enrique Tarrio of the Proud Boys received 22 years. But here is what is happening right now that most people are not fully connecting to this ruling. On the first day of his second term, Trump issued pardons for almost everybody convicted in connection with January 6th. And just weeks ago, in April 2026, Trump's own Justice Department filed papers seeking to vacate the seditious conspiracy convictions of Proud Boys and Oath Keepers members entirely, meaning permanently erased, gone, as if they never happened, and those individuals could never be prosecuted again for January 6th. The Justice Department called these Biden-era weaponized prosecutions. Think about what that means. The same president that a federal judge has now linked through his own words and conduct to a plausible conspiracy with the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers is now using the power of his office to wipe out their criminal records entirely. Greg Rosen, who led the Capitol Siege prosecution unit that handled over 1,500 January 6 cases, said, "This is not about fairness or justice. It is about overriding jury verdicts and rewarding individuals solely because of their political alignment with the administration." And the people who paid the price for all of this, the police officers, are still in court, still seeking damages, still describing physical injuries, exposure to chemical agents, and lasting emotional trauma from that day. Over 140 officers were injured. Their civil cases survived the pardons because civil liability works separately from criminal clemency. A pardon does not erase what those officers went through. So here is where we are. A federal judge says the lawsuits go forward. The court finds a plausible conspiracy. The people convicted of planning the attack are having their records erased by the very administration the judge is scrutinizing. And the officers who were beaten defending the Capitol are the ones still fighting for accountability in court. This is what accountability looks like when power protects itself. And it is exactly the kind of moment that demands people pay attention. Leave a comment with what you think about this and subscribe if you want more breakdowns like this one.